Hey, what's up? It's Anthony Marley Love. Welcome to our Traveling While Black Across America series, Volume 2.
Yes, and Volume 2 is all about the Oregon coast. So we're going to showcase the Oregon coast to you all, and we cannot wait. And we're starting right here in Coos Bay, Oregon.
Yeah, so come along with us to check it out.
When it comes to black history in Oregon, let's just say it hasn't been kind to black folks. Take the story of Marcus Lopez, the first known black man to set foot in what would become Oregon. He arrived at Tillamook Bay in 1788 with merchant sea captain Robert Gray. The brother didn't even make it a day. He was killed during a conflict with local Native Americans.
Lopez's tragic fate set the tone for what will become a harsh history for black people in Oregon, marked by its infamous black exclusion laws. But that history doesn't change the fact that Oregon's coast is home to some of the most breathtaking scenery you'll find anywhere. And despite that past, everyone has the right to experience it.
For the next volume of our TWB Across America road trip series, we listened to our community and hit the road to explore the iconic Oregon coast. Starting in Seattle, we made our way down to Coos Bay and rode up Highway 101, ending in Astoria, making sure to take in as much of its world-renowned beauty as possible, while attempting to uncover any hidden gems along the way.
This trip will be a whole different vibe from our last road trip adventure, for so many reasons, from the landscapes and unique geography to the variety of activities waiting to be explored.
Even Oregon's complex history with black people meant we had to adjust our rating scale for this journey. It wasn't the same adventure as before, but if you loved our first Across America road trip series, you can bet that some things won't change for Volume 2.
We can't wait to show you the beauty, the magic, and the awe of the Oregon coast. Join us on Traveling While Black Across America Road Trip Series, Volume 2. Coos Bay is our first stop on our Oregon coast road trip. The city reflects its Native American roots more so than any other city we'll visit on this trip. That's because it's named after the original inhabitants of the area, the Coos tribe.
The Coos people, like many of the indigenous tribes on the coast, benefited from the area's abundant seafood and timber resources. Not surprising that European settlers would also benefit from those same resources, especially timber.
Yes, especially timber. In fact, it was America's booming timber industry that blew Coos Bay up in the late 19th and early 20th century. During that time, Coos Bay was a shipping and logging hub that fueled its economic growth. As you will see, those remnants are still visible around the city today.
Although, even with its abundant resources, the region may have never gotten that far in development if it wasn't for the construction of a structure that can now be seen all up and down the coast, a lighthouse. See, during the 19th century, Coos Bay's rocky location on Oregon's coast was infamous for numerous shipwrecks.
Finally, in 1866, the Cape Arago Lighthouse was built, and right away the number of shipwrecks in the area were significantly reduced.
The reduction in shipwrecks allowed Coos Bay to be established as a reliable hub and attract businesses and settlers to the region.
Like others that line the Oregon coast, the Cape Arago Lighthouse still stands today, and while it was decommissioned in 2006, it stands as a reminder that if not for these structures, trade and industry would be impossible. Also, they do make the scenery more beautiful.
In Coos Bay, the lighthouses aren't the only thing that contribute to the scenic beauty. The city's proximity to Oregon's unique landscapes make it a great destination for outdoor activities. One of those unique landscapes is the iconic Oregon Dunes.
Coos Bay is actually known as the gateway to the Oregon Dunes. We'll be showing more of the dunes in our next episode, where we stopped on the way to Newport, Oregon. But for this episode, we were excited to be checking out the largest city on the Oregon coast and putting it up to all of our scales.
Considering what we heard about the beauty of Oregon coast, for this road trip series, we are just as excited for the drive in between destinations. And even though our first leg of the series coming from Seattle wasn't technically on the coast, it surprisingly held its own on the journey. Drive grade. For this episode only, we are going to explain our expanded drive grade rating scale.
Starting with our last road trip series, we launched our expanded rating scales for all of our categories, going from a 5-point scale to a 10-point scale, allowing for us to add more context for why we are rating experiences the way we are.
For drive grade, we broke it down like this: the quality of the views along the route, the quality of access to gas stations and restaurants along the route, or what we call roadside amenities, the easiness of the route, or in other words, the route doesn't require a lot of highway switching or worse, traffic. The quality and or amount of roadside attractions that entice one to pull off along the route. Finally, you already know, we're gonna grade the quality of the parking. Hopefully there are a lot of options for parking, and the more free options, the better.
The first leg of our drive would start in Seattle with the average drive time that should take a little over 6.5 hours. But you already know that our Across America road trips are not your average road trip because we always look for interesting stops along the way.
Yes, interesting stops that we call roadside attractions. But before we break down the score we gave in that regard, let's start with the difficulty of the route. The route was the longest of the trip and requires the most highways, neither of which are terrible. I-5 South to State Highway 38 West to get to US Route 101 wasn't too difficult. But since this is one leg of 3 others, we have to take all into account.
Since the others by default only require traveling straight up US Route 101, we're only going to give 1 point for route difficulty. The same thinking goes into our scoring in regard to quality of views. This first leg, there are a couple of gems, especially if you're lucky enough to catch Mount Rainier out. But compared to the other legs in the series, the views on this leg are a bit forgotten.
Since 2 hours and 40 minutes of the ride is through our home base state of Washington, we'll give 1 point for views. But here's where the leg holds its own compared to the others. First, roadside amenities. Not once during this leg between Seattle and Coos Bay were we worried about not seeing a gas station.
Yes, there are plenty of gas stations and as well as restaurants and coffee shops in case we need to grab some fuel for ourselves. So we can easily give the full 2 points for roadside amenities. And the word abundance can also be used when describing the amount of roadside attractions.
Just in the part of the drive through Washington, we passed through some really dope places that we've actually covered on our channel. And some of those places invoke some pretty significant Black history.
Now, only about 15 minutes from Olympia maybe is the city of Tumwater, and it's very interesting.
So the story goes, there was a man named George Bush. Not that George Bush, a different George Bush. He was a free Black man that was living in Missouri. When he heard about the opportunity that was out here in the Pacific Northwest, he wanted to take his chance and see if he could strike it rich as well. So he packed up his family and he headed out west to arrive in the state that we're headed to, Oregon. In Oregon, he was met with the Black exclusionary laws.
So the Black exclusionary laws are basically where Black people, they weren't allowed to be in the Oregon Territory. No Blacks were allowed, and they were in the Oregon Territory, and there were things called lash laws where they would get so many lashes for however many days they were in the Oregon Territory. So when George Bush found this out, him and his family left Oregon Territory and went to Washington State.
When they got to Washington State, George Bush founded a town that is still in existence today, and that town is called Tumwater.
And not too far down the road, a man named George Washington,
Not that George Washington.
another Black man named George Washington, founded the town of Centralia.
So, Black men from Missouri founding towns in Washington is somewhat of a trend in the state. If you want to find out more, take a look at our YouTube channel. We do have an episode where we took a trip to Centralia.
This leg also took us through Olympia, Washington, the first state capital of the trip.
Also on this leg, we hit our second state capital along the way, Salem, Oregon. But Salem stood out because it was the first state capitol building in any of our series that didn't have a dome. And considering the state's history, it was most definitely an interesting design choice.
Nope, there's no dome. But should we be surprised? For a state that started out being established as the white man's Mecca, would have a white man on top of their Capitol building instead.
Interesting.
The Oregon part of this leg does feature 2 things that are known to be great in Oregon. In Salem, we encountered the first of the 2.
One thing here in Oregon, the food truck scene is very unique here.
Not only did we find delicious food at the food truck spot we chose in Salem, but we also found a Black-owned business.
The capital of the state of Oregon, we're at a Black-owned restaurant called JoJo's Soul Food and Memphis Barbecue. Be sure to check them out if you're ever in town.
Yeah, we can't wait. Try all this good food.
The other great Oregon feature the route showcases is its spectacular access to nature. Not too far outside of the state capital, we stopped at a viewpoint to get a glimpse of one of the best parks in the state.
Hey everyone, we are at the Willamette Valley Viewpoint right outside Silver Falls State Park in Oregon, and it's pretty cool.
Silver Falls State Park is the largest of the 5 state parks right here in Oregon. It's known for gorgeous waterfalls, historic buildings, and a beautiful temperate rainforest.
It's a rainforest in Oregon. It's pretty awesome.
A lot like Washington.
This leg of the road trip also includes the chance to experience a little bit of the Oregon academic culture. We pulled off in Eugene, Oregon to visit the University of Oregon, where we headed to one of the most popular spots on campus.
We're right here on the campus of University of Oregon, standing in front of their football stadium. If you haven't heard, they got a pretty good football team.
Eugene seems like a really chill college town. Food spots look pretty good as well. I wish you could stay longer.
With all these amazing options for roadside attractions, there's no surprise that we're giving 2 points in this category.
We can give both points for parking in Coos Bay as well. The whole time, it was free parking. A great sign for Coos Bay, just like the grade for the first leg of this road trip series.
The total tally of the points brings the total drive grade score to an 8 out of 10. Wow, that's really good, and we didn't even drive the coast yet.
Although we didn't get to drive the coast, Coos Bay will be our first experience on the Oregon coast. We were really excited to see how it would stack up against our level of fun scale.
Level of fun. Once again, for this episode only, we're going to explain our expanded level of fun rating scale. For our 10-point level of fun rating, we will be considering the amount and quality of activities offered within the vicinity of the location, the variety of activities that apply to the different visitor demographics. And what we mean by this is, are the activities better suited for couples, singles, or families? Are they more suited for younger or older folks? And we are also taking into account the quality of restaurant options, the affordability of the area. Finally, are there any special events happening during our visit?
Coos Bay was the perfect destination for being the first stop on this road trip series. Not only for its obvious location being at the southern tip of the state, also it embodies a lot of what makes the Oregon coast special.
When comparing Coos Bay to our level of fun scale, it's very important to what exactly those things are. For example, starting with the quality of activities, it's easy to see that access to nature and the outdoors is a huge component.
Even the place we stayed during our time in Coos Bay was built around connecting guests to the beauty and peacefulness of Oregon's coast, Bay Point Landing.
Bay Point Landing is what we would describe as a nature getaway resort situated on the coast. The property combines modern luxury with upscale amenities.
But what's really cool about Bay Point Landing is how guests can choose how they want to stay. The property offers sleek cabins, stylish airstreams. They even have RV hookups.
For our stay, we chose to stay in their stylish cabins, and it was super cozy. And the s'mores kits that were provided made our nights just as fun as our days spent in the city.
Of course, great access to nature and beaches can also be had in the city outside of the Bay Point Landing property. That's because Coos Bay offers a lot of awesome parks.
Yes, parks like Mingus Park, a popular park that features a Japanese garden and walking trails, all making it a great place for a relaxing stroll. But if you're looking for more adventure, there are also a couple state parks nearby. No matter which one you choose to check out, once again, you're sure to experience everything that makes the Oregon coast.
Right now, we're in Short Acres State Park.
This state park is beautiful. It has wonderful views of the Oregon coastline, great hiking trails, and also a serene botanical garden.
As you can see, if you love the outdoors, Coos Bay is a great option. But what if you're looking for something else? For a place that celebrated its 150-year anniversary last year, history nerds like myself will love learning about Coos history all over town, like at its popular Coos Bay Boardwalk.
Coos Bay also has some really cool looking museums, like the Coos Bay History Museum that covers the cultural and maritime history of Coos Bay and Oregon's South Coast as a whole. And the Coos Bay Art Museum is another cool museum that represents Coos Bay's up-and-coming art scene.
Although to me, the coolest part about Coos Bay history is that it is the birthplace and hometown of legendary long-distance runner Steve Prefontaine. Not surprisingly, there are many tributes dedicated to the legendary runner all over town.
Yes, Coos Bay doesn't disappoint. They even have a casino for those of us who love to do a little gambling. Yes, the abundance and variety of activities within and around Coos Bay is why we can give all 2 points for quality of activities.
The abundance of variety is why we can also give all 2 points for demographic applicability. Yep, people of all ages and variety of interests would have an easy time finding something fun to do within Coos Bay.
And that goes the same for food within Coos Bay. Food and wine nerds like myself would love the great tasting food and drink options. But our favorite restaurant experience in Coos Bay, and possibly the trip overall, was at Restaurant O.
Yes, who knew that one could find fine dining curated by a world-renowned chef in downtown Coos Bay? See, Restaurant O is owned and operated by MasterChef Eoghain O'Neill. Let's just say that this guy is no joke. After graduating summa cum laude with a degree in culinary arts in Canterbury, England, Chef O'Neill worked in kitchens all around Europe, including London, Paris, and Sardinia, Italy, just to name a few.
Finally, in 2017, Chef O'Neill moved to Coos Bay, Oregon, and opened up Restaurant O. While Chef O'Neill specializes in Italian and French cuisine, his restaurant also offers a wide variety of local and international dishes. Also, what's most interesting to me about Chef O'Neill is that he was once featured as a contestant on the Food Network's hit show Beat Bobby Flay. Super cool.
It shouldn't be a surprise to know that Chef O'Neill was also a good friend of the late, great Anthony Bourdain. Yes, if you're in Coos Bay, you have to stop by and check out Restaurant O. We will definitely be back.
The Restaurant O experience alone is why we can give both points for quality of restaurants in Coos Bay, and the perfect scores only continued when looking at affordability. In comparison to most places on the West Coast, Coos Bay is extremely affordable.
It was actually the most affordable destination on this road trip series, and another reason why this would be a great destination for families. The only category Coos Bay didn't receive a perfect score was for special events. See, while they do offer a pretty fun looking festival called the Bay Area Fun Festival that takes place every September, there's not much more that stands out after that. So we'll only give 1 point here.
Still, with only getting 1 point in the special events category, Coos Bay's level of fun score is still really impressive when you tally up the points. So for Coos Bay, we can give a 9 out of 10 for our level of fun grade overall.
Wow. Based on the drive and level of fun grades, Coos Bay is definitely not a bad start for our road trip series. But how does the city stack up against our comfort scale?
You mean our Oregon comfort scale, right?
Right. In our Comfortability for Black People segment, we'll explain what that means.
Comfortability for Black people. Oregon's complex history in regard to Black people has ultimately led to the state's current low Black population. Therefore, we knew that if we wanted to more accurately evaluate our experiences and destinations within the state, we would have to adjust how we calculate our Comfortability for Black people rating for this journey.
This was not a problem. See, this updated scale is still simple, but more effective for destinations within a state like Oregon. While we kept factors like our personal experiences, the number of Black people seen, and artifacts of inclusion, we made 2 swaps. We replaced Black history and Black population numbers with the diversity in the destination's marketing and the quality of access to local cultural resource groups.
Although we will give you a heads up that while the scale criteria has changed, the scores on this series are not at the level we usually see on destinations we feature on our show. Still, our personal experiences within all these destinations were positive.
What's great about our new scale is that the 2 new criteria is something that the people running the cities can directly influence. So to improve the score, ironically, while Black history was one of the 2 removed criteria for this road trip series, Coos Bay actually has some pretty significant and tragic history involving a Black resident.
That Black resident's name was Alonzo Tucker. He was a businessman and boxer. Alonzo was lynched by a white mob in Coos Bay. When the local newspaper reported on the incident, it became the only documented lynching in Oregon.
Thanks to an effort led by Taylor Stewart, founder of the Remembrance Project, the Alonzo Tucker Historical Marker stands outside the Coos History Museum.
The erection of Alonzo Tucker's plaque and the city's acknowledgement of such a horrific event shows that there is at least an effort being made, and is why we will give a point to Coos Bay for visibility of artifacts of inclusion.
Now look, that's a bit of a reach, because outside of that, there wasn't much. But when you see the final tally, you'll understand why the reach was much needed in order to bring the score closer to reflecting our personal comfort.
And that wasn't the only reach, giving 1 point in diversity and destination marketing because the Coos Bay Adventure Guide features 1 Black and 1 Hispanic person.
Shout out to the Bay Point Landing for their willingness to contribute to our series. Perhaps they will influence the rest of Coos Bay's marketing decision makers to follow along in promotion of inclusive travel.
We can also give a point for access to local cultural resource groups, being that it is the home base for the tribal government of Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw.
But after that, there were no more points to squeeze out for Coos Bay, because we didn't see any other Black people during our time in Coos Bay. So we'll give 0 points for Black people seen.
The great thing for us was we didn't have to reach that far or squeeze that hard for points in regard to our personal comfort, because we can absolutely give both points here.
Yeah, our personal comfort was pretty high during our time in Coos Bay. It was truly a pleasure meeting friendly people at the Bay Point Landing and throughout the spots we dropped into throughout the town, like Restaurant O. Be sure to keep that in mind when you're seeing our final comfortability score.
So for Coos Bay, based on our scale, we give a 5 out of 10 for comfortability for Black people.
Yes, we enjoyed our experience overall in Coos Bay, and our scales reflect as much. Well, at least the first two. Either way, we can't wait to show you more of the state we visited as a part of this road trip series.
We can't say enough how Coos Bay was such a great start to our Oregon Coast road trip. While we were excited, we were just as nervous if the other destinations could live up to what we just experienced.
Either way, we were about to find out. Next stop, Newport, Oregon.